The golden aura of Super Saiyan 2 Gohan illuminates the ruined wasteland, and the ultimate biological weapon finally experiences the one emotion he was never programmed to feel: absolute suffocating terror. For the entire Android Saga, the universe praised Perfect Cell as the ultimate flawless warrior. But when you strip away the stolen Namekian regeneration and the stolen Saiyan genetics, the analytical truth becomes entirely undeniable. Perfect Cell was not a god. He was a massive, arrogant fraud who inherited the exact same pathetic ego that got Frieza chopped in half. If you still believe Cell was a tactical genius, I want you to head to the comments right now and try to defend his massive biological mistake. Because the math proves he was programmed to fail from day one. To truly comprehend the catastrophic failure of the ultimate life form, we must first dissect the dark laboratory of his creation and the twisted psychology of his architect. Dr. Gero believed he was writing the perfect code for the perfect weapon deep within his subterranean bunker. He deployed his microscopic spy robots to gather genetic material from the strongest fighters who ever walked the earth and beyond. He thought he was harvesting pure, unstoppable power. He thought he was extracting the raw martial arts brilliance of Goku, the tactical cruelty of Piccolo, the boundless potential of Gohan, and the imperial dominance of King Cold. The prevailing theory is that Cell is a biological amalgamation of the greatest fighters in history. But Gero made a fatal miscalculation that doomed his creation before the embryonic fluid ever began to circulate in his test tube. He did not just copy their muscle fibers and Kai signatures. He copied their brains. He copied their neuroses. He copied their crippling psychological flaws. And when you combine the genetics of the most arrogant and self-destructive beings in the known universe, you do not get a perfect warrior. You get a biological narcissist crippled by a deeply fragile ego. You get a creature that is fundamentally at war with its own genetic programming. The cells of Goku demand a fair and challenging fight, but the cells of Frieza demand absolute, uncontested superiority. The cells of Vegeta demand that he prove his royal dominance, while the cells of Piccolo provide a cold calculation that is constantly overridden by the fiery arrogance of the Saiyan blood. This creates a psychological paradox that makes actual perfection entirely impossible to achieve. Gero did not engineer a god. He engineered a biological civil war. The mind of Cell is a chaotic battlefield where the competing egos of his donors constantly fight for control of his actions. This internal conflict is the exact reason why he can never truly be a flawless warrior. He is pulled in too many different directions by the very DNA that gives him his immense physical strength. The pursuit of perfection is merely a coping mechanism to deal with the agonizing reality that he has no true identity of his own. Look closely at the dominant traits that drive this monster forward through the timeline. The underlying truth is that his drive is not destruction, but perfection, and perfection requires maintenance. But what does perfection actually mean to a creature built entirely from stolen parts? It means he has a fundamental insecurity woven into his very double helix. From the moment he crawls out of his larval shell and sheds his insectoid skin, he is a slave to his DNA. He possesses the cells of Frieza, and we know exactly how the galactic tyrant operates under pressure. Frieza is a prodigy, but Frieza is also a brat. The Emperor of the Universe operates on a foundation of unearned entitlement and supreme arrogance. He believes that the cosmos owes him absolute obedience simply because he was born strong. When Frieza is pushed into a corner by a superior force, he panics and destroys the board rather than playing the game fairly. Dr. Gero took that exact pathetic superiority complex and spliced it directly into the mind of his ultimate bio-android. But the sheer horror of this genetic cocktail does not stop there. Gero also mixed in the royal blood of Vegeta. The Prince of all Saiyans is entirely defined by his monumental hubris and his desperate need to prove his supremacy. Vegeta constantly allows his enemies to reach their maximum potential just so he can crush them at their absolute best to massage his own pride. Vegeta literally allowed semi-perfect Cell to absorb Android 18 purely out of his own blinding ego. And tragically, Perfect Cell inherited that exact same suicidal pride. Cell is not a cold, calculating machine sent to exterminate humanity. He is a walking contradiction trapped in a biological cage of profound arrogance. The visual of his perfect form represents the cold, unfeeling march of evolution stripped of morality. But his lack of morality is completely overshadowed by his overwhelming need for validation from the mortals he considers beneath him. He cannot simply win a fight and move on to the next target. He has to prove he is intellectually and physically superior in every conceivable way. He has to hear his opponents admit total defeat before he executes them. This is exactly why he is a massive fraud. A truly perfect organism would prioritize its own survival and the objective completion of its goals above all else. A true apex predator does not play with its food when other predators are lurking nearby. But Cell is biologically incapable of simply securing the victory. His Frieza cells demand that he gloat over his fallen enemies. His Vegeta cells demand that he flex his golden aura to intimidate the weak. His code forces him to put himself in completely unnecessary danger just to satisfy an ego that does not even truly belong to him. He is a patchwork monster wearing the personalities of dead men and calling it divine perfection. Because Cell has no failures to reflect on, he genuinely believes he is entirely infallible. When a warrior never loses, they never learn how to adapt to a losing scenario. Cell believes he is already the finished product. This supreme overconfidence is a lethal trap waiting to be sprung. He genuinely thinks he is a god of the new world, but he is just a slave to the worst personality traits of the men he was built to systematically destroy. This terrifying genetic curse leads directly to the most idiotic military strategy in the entire history of the franchise, which is the announcement of the Cell games. Fans love to praise this specific arc as a masterpiece of villainous planning and psychological warfare. They see Cell standing in his custom-built arena, and they mistake his theatricality for immense tactical genius. But let us look at the raw analytical truth of the situation on the ground. Cell has finally achieved his perfect form after years of crawling through the dirt and drinking the biomass of human cities. He is vastly stronger than Goku and every other fighter on the planet. He has completely humiliated Vegeta and Trunks in direct combat. He effectively holds the entire planet hostage with his overwhelming power level. If his objective was simply to conquer the Earth or prove his dominance, he could have eradicated the defenders of the planet in a matter of mere seconds. We have seen how true efficiency operates in this universe. Future Trunks was a pragmatist who did not give Cell a chance to absorb the androids in his timeline. The boy from the future killed his enemies instantly because he understood the brutal mechanics of a real war. But Perfect Cell is completely incapable of such basic military efficiency. Instead of eliminating the only actual threats to his existence, he decides to hold a televised martial arts tournament for the amusement of the universe. He gives his enemies 10 entire days to rest, train, scheme, and formulate a viable plan to kill him. This is definitely not the behavior of a tactical mastermind or a god of destruction. This is a pathetic and desperate cry for attention from a creature that desperately needs to be worshipped by the very people he plans to murder. He builds a ring out of rocks in the wasteland because his stolen Saiyan DNA demands a grand stage for combat. He wants the entire world to watch his victory. He hijacks television stations because his Frieza DNA demands an audience of trembling subjects to witness his majesty. He wants the humans to broadcast their own despair into every living room on the planet. But this entirely defeats the absolute purpose of being an ultimate weapon of war. Weapons do not host talk shows on national television. Weapons do not give their targets a 10-day head start to prepare a counterattack. Weapons do not stand motionless in a wasteland waiting for a military army to send useless tanks and fighter jets just so they can swat them away for public amusement. The entire concept of the Cell games is a massive neon sign pointing directly to the deep insecurities rotting inside his artificial brain. He creates arbitrary rules to govern the violence. He institutes a ring-out policy to simulate a formal martial arts structure. He promises to fight the challengers one by one in honorable combat rather than fighting them all simultaneously. This is a stage play designed specifically to stroke his extremely fragile ego. He is treating planetary annihilation like a sporting event because he thinks his biology makes him untouchable. But by giving Goku the time to enter the hyperbolic time chamber with Gohan, he effectively signs his own death warrant. He allows the only beings capable of endless biological growth to exploit a pocket dimension of time purely because he wants the final battle to be entertaining. A true predator does not give the prey time to sharpen its claws or learn new techniques. A true god does not need a terrified television crew to validate his divinity in front of mortals. Cell sets up the entire tournament purely because he needs the legendary Super Saiyan to admit absolute inferiority on a public stage. The tournament is a giant monument to his own spectacular fraudulence. He is playing a game he rigged in his own favor just so he can pretend he actually earned the title of perfection through hard work. And when Goku actually surrenders during their highly anticipated match, Cell is not satisfied with the outcome at all. He is profoundly confused and visibly angry. He wanted to break the spirit of Goku physically and mentally until the man begged for mercy. The horrifying realization that Goku is treating the fight as a mere stepping stone for his young son completely shatters the grand illusion of the Cell games. The ultimate bio-android slowly realizes he is not the main character of this epic story. He realizes he is just a training dummy for a child with hidden potential. And this devastating realization begins to fracture his fragile psyche long before the boy ever lands a meaningful physical strike. The complete and utter collapse of the perfect Cell mythos occurs the exact moment Super Saiyan 2 Gohan steps onto the ruined battlefield. This is the precise moment where the massive fraud is finally exposed to the brutal and unforgiving light of reality. Up until this specific point in the timeline, Cell has only ever fought people who were vastly weaker than him or completely exhausted. He was a cosmic bully masquerading as an untouchable deity. He enjoyed the thrill of the fight strictly because he knew he possessed a biological safety net and could never actually lose. But when the young boy transforms and his hair spikes up into the air, the power dynamic of the entire universe instantly shifts. The blinding golden light of the angry child completely suffocates the arrogant and smug aura of the bio-android. And how exactly does the ultimate analytical genius react to being completely outclassed in raw power and speed? Does he adapt his combat strategy to compensate for the difference? Does he use his superior martial arts knowledge to outmaneuver the raging child? Does he utilize the clever techniques of Tien or the wisdom of Piccolo to outsmart his opponent? He absolutely does not. He completely abandons all logic, reason, and martial arts discipline. When Gohan punches him squarely in the stomach and forces the monster to physically vomit up Android 18, the visual metaphor is absolutely stunning to behold. Cell literally loses his so-called perfection in a shower of vile stomach acid. His body violently rejects the stolen power because his biological foundation was always inherently unstable and unearned. He painfully reverts back to his ugly, bulky, imperfect semi-state. And in this humiliating moment, the psychological horror of his genetic design reaches its absolute peak. He simply cannot comprehend the concept of defeat. His Frieza cells are screaming in absolute terror at the sight of a golden-haired monkey surpassing him. His Vegeta cells are drowning in the supreme humiliation of being physically dominated by a child. His fragile ego completely snaps under the immense atmospheric pressure of a vastly superior power level. The supposed perfect warrior is instantly reduced to a crying, terrified, and pathetic animal backed into a corner. He throws the ultimate temper tantrum in front of the entire surviving cast. He quickly realizes he cannot beat the boy in a fair physical fight, so he decides to cowardly blow up the entire planet and everyone on it. He rapidly inflates his unstable body into a massive grotesque balloon of volatile energy. This hideous transformation is the ultimate indisputable proof of his profound cowardice and fraudulence. He is holding the entire Earth hostage purely because his massive ego cannot handle the simple concept of losing a fistfight to a superior opponent. A true dedicated martial artist accepts defeat with grace and vows to improve. A true unfeeling weapon executes its final protocol with cold, calculated efficiency. But Cell is weeping in fear. He is panicking uncontrollably. He is threatening to detonate his own core and kill himself just to wipe the confident smile off the face of his enemy. It is the exact same pathetic, cowardly tactic Frieza used on the dying planet Namek when the tyrant realized he could not beat the legendary Super Saiyan in hand-to-hand combat. We all know Frieza was cut in half and left to rot in the cold vacuum of space precisely because of his own blinding arrogance and refusal to accept defeat. Perfect Cell is simply repeating the exact same historical mistake because he is a prisoner of his own DNA. He is permanently trapped in an endless loop of genetic stupidity handed down by his donors. And even after the monster miraculously survives his own self-destruction and returns to Earth with a massive Zenkai boost, he still learns absolutely nothing from his utter humiliation. He returns to the battlefield even more arrogant and delusional than ever before. He truly thinks he has become a god of death, but he is just a remarkably lucky parasite who managed to steal another technique through sheer biological coincidence. He kills the boy from the future instantly just to cause emotional pain, proving he is nothing more than a sadist. In the final apocalyptic beam struggle, he pours all of his stolen energy and immense hatred into a massive blue wave of destruction. But he inevitably loses the clash because he fundamentally lacks the one crucial thing that true legendary fighters possess. He has no genuine spirit. He is just an empty artificial vessel filled to the brim with stolen data and borrowed time. He has no real motivation or driving purpose other than protecting his own incredibly fragile vanity and masking his deep insecurities. When the walking manifestation of stolen genetics and unearned power meets the genuine, unbridled, and pure spirit of a father guiding his son, the fraud is completely atomized. The massive smoking crater left behind by the resulting explosion is the only truly appropriate resting place for a creature built entirely on a foundation of lies and stolen glory. Perfect Cell was never a god among mortals. He was never a true king of the universe or the apex of organic evolution. He was a pathetic Frankenstein monster built from the discarded psychological flaws of vastly superior men. Dr. Gero created a dark mirror that perfectly reflected the worst possible aspects of the universe, and he arrogantly called that reflection perfection. But true perfection is an absolute myth in a universe driven by constant growth and infinite potential. The terrifying story of the ultimate android is not a story of an unstoppable warrior executing a flawless master plan to conquer the stars. It is a pathetic psychological tragedy about a genetically engineered narcissist who forced the world to build a stadium just to broadcast his own humiliating execution. He is a monumental fraud who died screaming into the void because he finally realized a devastating truth in his final moments. Wearing the skin of legends and copying the techniques of masters does not magically make you a legend yourself. It just makes you a highly visible target for the true warriors of the universe to destroy. The universe did not lose a perfect being on that fateful day in the wasteland. It merely exterminated a delusional parasite that was completely and fatally obsessed with staring at its own false reflection. He died knowing that no amount of stolen cells, absorbed androids, or borrowed techniques could ever compensate for the fact that he was fundamentally hollow inside. He was a spectacular failure of science and a profound embarrassment to the warriors whose blood pumped through his artificial veins. Perfect Cell was the ultimate cosmic joke, and Gohan was simply the one who delivered the punchline.